everyone. Today we are reading the book Mr. Worry. Mr. Worry. Poor Mr. Worry. Whatever happened, he worried about it. If it rained, he worried that his roof was going to leak. Drip, 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 drip. If it didn't rain, he worried that all the plants in his garden were going to die. If he set off shopping, he worried that the shops would be shut when he got there. And when the shops weren't shut when he got there, he worried that he was spending too much money shopping. And when he got home with his shopping, he worried that he'd left something behind, or that something had fallen out of his basket on the way home. He sure had a lot to worry about. And when he got home and discovered that he hadn't left anything behind and that nothing had fallen out of his basket on the way home, he worried that he'd bought too much. And then he worried about where to put it all. Life was just one long worry for poor Mr. Worry. You can even see his wrinkles from worrying too much. One day, he went for a walk. He was worried that he might walk too far or not be able to get home. But on the other hand, he was worried that if he didn't walk far enough, he wouldn't get enough exercise. He hurried along worrying. Or you could say, he worried along hurrying. He met Mr. Bump. "I'm very worried about you," he said. "Why's that?" asked Mr. Bump. "I'm worried that one of these days you might hurt yourself," he said. Don't you worry about that," replied Mr. Bump, and he went off, tripping over his own feet. Mr. Worry went on. He met Mr. Noisy. He said, "I'm very worried about you." Mr. Noisy said, "Why's that? Why are you worried about me?" And he replied, "I'm worried that you might lose your voice." Now Mr. Noisy said, "Don't you worry your head about that." And then he went off. Clump, 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 clump. So Mr. Worry went on. He met Mr. Greedy. He said, "I'm worried about you, Mr. Greedy." Mr. Greedy said, "Why's that?" "Well," Mr. Worry explained, "I'm worried that you might eat too much and be sick." "Me?" replied Mr. Greedy. "Eat too much? Impossible!" And then he went off for lunch. Mr. Worry went on. He met a wizard. "Hello there, hello, wizard." And the wizard said, "Who are you?" "I'm Mr. Worry." "And you sure do look like it," commented the wizard. "Tell you what," he went on, for he was a helpful sort of wizard. Why don't you go home and write down every single thing that you're worried about, and I'll make sure that none of these things ever happens." He smiled. "And then you won't have anything to worry about, will you?" said the wizard. Mr. Worry smiled. It was the first time he'd smiled in a long time. In fact, it was the first time he'd smiled that whole year. He hurried home with great excitement. When he got home, he sat down to write all the things that worried him. Every single thing. It was a long, long list. And then he went home and had the best night's sleep he'd had in years. The following morning, the wizard came round to collect Mr. Worry's list. "Oh, my goodness me," he said when he saw the size of it. "However," he said, "leave it to me. I'll go off and make sure that none of these things ever happens." And off he went. "Nothing to worry about now," he called over his shoulder. "Nothing at all." Mr. Worry heaved a sigh of relief. Finally, I don't have anything to worry about. That day was the first day in Mr. Worry's life that he didn't have a single worry to worry about. and the next day, and the day after, and the day after that. On Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday. Mr. Worry didn't have a care in the world. But on Monday morning, he was a worried man again. Oh dear, why do you think was worrying him? What do you think? Can you guess? He went to see the wizard. Oh dear, said the wizard when he saw him standing on his doorstep. What's worrying you again? I'll tell you. What do you guys think? Mr. Worry said, I'm worried now because I don't have anything to worry about. Then he went home to worry about not having anything to worry about. Okay, so that's the end of Mr. Worry. Isn't he a little bit silly? But I think it's just his way of dealing with things, that he's just a worried man whatsoever. That's all for today. Bye.